Okay, there we go. I think this is working now. I am not sure what was happening there. Okay, there we go. I think this is working now. Yeah, okay. We're live. I was having some technical issues, folks, so kind of a rough start here. Hold on, let me get hold of Brendan. Okay, so yeah, he should be joining here in just a minute. We're gonna be talking about how cannabis is not addictive, uh, as a start here. So I apologize if things were kind of goofy here off the get-go, but for whatever reason, yeah, it just wasn't working properly. So I don't know, weird goofy things with Zoom, but we are live regardless. And how's everybody doing? So fair enough. Just waiting for Brendan here. Okay. So, all right. Haven't been on in a bit, guys. Been doing a few things, lots of changes. Dogs barking in the background because why not? Hope y'all doing good. Throw a comment in there. Ian, how you doing in Ireland there, brother? Welcome, welcome. I got a new setup here too, so it's a little goofy. Grow on the down low. What's going on, brother? Been a minute. We're talking about cannabis addiction today and how it isn't addictive, quite frankly, and how some of the rhetoric that's being pushed lately by the media, by the government, whatnot. Um, well, Brendan's got some sources I believe he wanted to cover, so I don't have all the information here in front of me, but we are going to talk about that today. Just trying to do a couple of things here because I got started kind of late because Zoom, for whatever reason, was being quite grouchy and was not working with the setup that I had in place. That's okay though. I need to log into one more thing here and we'll get going on that right just here in a minute. Otherwise, how's everybody doing today? You smoking anything good? You got anything going on in that regard? If so, what you smoking on and how is it? Let me know. I will be firing up some grow stuff here, some what you call it, some blog video stuff here very soon. I got my grow going again. Things are looking quite fantastic. Very pleased, and hope to see y'all on those here real soon. So definitely not addictive. No, it isn't. It can be habit forming. It can absolutely be habit forming. If I have to go on the road, if I don't have any smoke for a couple of days, the worst that happens to me is I don't have a bit of an appetite. That's about it. I don't have a bit of an appetite, and I don't sleep very good. But cannabis helps me sleep to begin with, so that's not really a thing to begin with. Otherwise, so we're just clicking around here. So I got some tape on the computer. Get some more folks here. Come hang out with us. I'm going to talk about this. All right. And still just waiting for our guest to make his way into the chat here. Certainly having a good time, like chatting with everybody. And if you're not on the Discord, I would love to get you over there. It's a real good time. Let me I'm just gonna throw that link up in the chat as well. And you can come find yourself over to hang out with us over there. We're always doing good stuff, talking about all sorts of grow related stuff, helping people out, this, that, and the other. So there's just a little link in the chat. You know, again, come check us out. And there he is. GMF, good to see you, brother. Brendan joining us just now. We are going to be talking about a few different things here. So also a new show coming up. We want to touch on. Want to talk a little bit about it. So certainly more in that regard too here. All right, making sure everything is long enough. Rough start to the cast. Oh, there he is. How's it going, Brendan?
What's going on?
Well, this, that, and the other. Bit of a technical difficulty to start with. Dude, I love the huge poster behind you, man. That's awesome. That's
Yeah, I'm building out the thing in my garage, but I'm not quite done with it yet.
Gotcha.
So I got kind of a makeshift. Not as cool as you with the background.
That one there is thanks to the community. They hooked me up with a real nice light. So much love to the people out there. And I think that's kind of what we're going to start talking about today is people and cannabis and how it is not an addictive substance. But we certainly know that there's been a lot of misinformation coming out lately. I know you've been looking at some of the stuff, and you recently did a cast over on your channel there. So I thought it'd be a good idea if we had you on here. We had to sit down and we talk around a few ideas and a few things, and of course some of the stuff that we're going to be doing here in the very near future in terms of casting with the new show. So
yeah, I'm excited for the new show. For the folks that have kind of seen some of the posts, what we're going to do is look to take real stories from folks on how cannabis impact their lives in a positive way and the steps that they took, and kind of dig into the background of it, why they made the decisions that they made, what pushed them into that direction, and those type of things. And so I think a lot of those stories that are going to eventually come out is going to find a lot of relief for people around the country, if not around the world, because anytime you're diagnosed with something, it's an initial shock, and depression immediately sets in, and then you're in your brain, it's like fight or flight type of transition. And so the people that chose to fight and they found great success, we get to hear from those type of folks, and I'm pretty excited about that.
yeah, absolutely. So the show's called Higher Medicine. Not sure when we're going to be dropping in here. We're still looking for some guests. If you are interested in coming and telling your story about how cannabis saved you, changed your life, reach out to me, photosyntech1@gmail.com, or you can contact us at medicinehire@gmail.com. So either or, reach out to either of us on Instagram, but certainly come on and we'd love to tell your tale. But I think today we want to sort of focus on, just the good part of the medicine itself, cannabis, the things it can do for people, and some of this misinformation that's been floating around and whatnot. I know you've been posting some stuff up on your Instagram account there, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about what you do for the community there, Brendan. Is it's not just about breeding these fantastic genetics. You're very much an activist in the community for growers' rights and whatnot. And folks, if you don't know about this stuff, you should be getting on there and following in-house.
Well, from our perspective, is we had great success and continue to have great success in breeding. However, when you really bring full circle, the people that allowed us to do and be who we are and a staple in the industry are kind of really getting the shaft with legalization coming. So and you have literally hundreds of thousands of voices that get drowned out. So we happen to have a voice and a standing. So what we're trying to do is bring awareness to folks and educate folks along the way, and the things that we learn, pass it on to others. And that's where, in our sense, is it's our responsibility to continue to give back to the community in multiple different ways, in any way that we possibly can, because it was so good to us, over the past decade.
Absolutely. So was there any specific articles or anything that you had in mind you wanted to touch on, wanted to talk about?
So right now, it's not, I don't know about Canada, but I'm pretty sure kind of the same things are starting to form in Canada. But here in the United States, what I'm starting to see is these very powerful advocates that oppose cannabis on all levels. And way their strategy is is incremental strategy. So they knock out a little piece, you know, chip away at the base of it, and that's what I'm kind of seeing that's happening. So there's like there's a group out there called Simple Approach to Marijuana, which is a powerful group. They now, when you look at their website, there's a lot of stuff that I agree with them on many levels, and then there's a lot of stuff that I disagree with them on. So as an example, they show that and point out the monopolization of the industry, the takeover, that type of stuff. But where I disagree is on the major focus on the addiction aspect of it, right? And yep. They kind of overblow it a bit on how severe it is. You know, they want to put caps and across the country and THC, this and that, and kind of take away what you consider is a right to people. You know, you should have a right to access whatever you like, or if you find something, even if it is high THC content, you're a responsible adult, right? So you'll find out pretty quick whether it's for you or not. But what I've noticed is that's just one of many groups that are starting to really gain serious traction. And what it's doing is it's taking us backwards, right? Yeah. And not progressing. You know, they cite a lot of research, a lot of stuff, but we all know there's no true research out there in this country because it's illegal for universities to do actual adequate research on cannabis in particular. There's one university that does it and has been doing it for the past 50 years, and that's the University of Mississippi. You have a couple of other universities that are kind of dabbling in it, like here, the University of Washington State University, but nothing on a serious grand scale to cite, you know, as, you know, sources and all that, because it's kind of all scattered. It's like anything that's new, you don't really have, it's not, you know, it's all scattered everywhere in the information. So you got to kind of piece it together. However, there is a lot of information coming out of Israel on CBD, CBG, on the cannabinoids and how it affects your body. And what I find most interesting about that is the same companies, pharmaceutical companies that oppose and pay for a lot of these groups to oppose cannabis are the very same companies that are spending millions and millions of dollars in Israel on research, you know?
Because that's the ultimate goal, is they want to get the research done and where they can get it, and then fight for the legalization here when they have the actual point of, oh, well, we've got all the science that we need. We're going to roll over and move out, you know, the home grower and whatnot and turn this into pure pharmaceuticals. They want control of the market.
Well, I do have a theory on that, though. Now that you mentioned that, is okay. So anytime you classify something as medicine, right, is very, very tough, because anything classified as medicine in the United States has to go through, and the FDA has to be involved. And we've seen in the past decade of how the FDA has treated both, not just cannabis, but also hemp, right? The FDA basically, by a couple of rulings, curbed the hemp industry overnight in this country, and then continue to do so. But what they'll do is they'll throw up a smokescreen and be like, oh, we'll kick it to the politicians, right, to make these decisions. But also, too, when you're kicking it to the politicians, they don't know what they're doing half of the time. And they have to rely on a lot of misinformation in order to make their, their conclusions. And we've seen that more often than not, you know. And ultimately what I'm getting at is when you classify something as medicine, that's exactly what they're going to do. And then they'll put the real clamp down on it, right? So you have, in this country in particular, life-saving medication that people struggle and go bankrupt just trying to stay alive, literally, right? And so that's what I'm afraid of, is with cannabis. There's true medicinal aspect properties to that, but but not with just the suppression over the past 70 years of it. But what they'll do is they'll try to corner the market. And I brought up before the Epidiolex, right, and use that as an example of the exploitation of a cannabinoid. So Epidiolex is essentially, actually, it's just CBD oil with some filler.
Yep.
And it's even got saccharose in it, which anybody that's understands and knows saccharose, it's a terrible product, right? But with that said, is that medication is $34,500 a year, and if you don't have adequate health care like we do in this country, or insurance coverage, that could be a huge hurdle for you when you're just trying to get relief from yourself or your kids just for anti-seizure medication, you know? So you kind of see the writing on the wall, but as we progress and move forward, I feel that this plant is going to get robbed from everybody. We'll go back into this deep suppression of information. And even like social media, sharing information on social media is extremely difficult because what they can, deem you as like propaganda, or put a a thing on your account, or even slow you down, And as a prime example of this is the other day in Washington D.C. they had the CEO of Twitter, or people from Twitter there, and the lawmaker asked, said, "Hey, look, you were censoring posts from accredited doctors, Harvard educated doctors that were making points, and you were censoring them, right? And putting the C word tag over it, the COVID tag over the posts and stuff,
Right.
But I'm not making a point of, I don't care where you fall on the pandemic, the shots, or anything like that. But you can't censor one side because you just don't like what what they're saying, because and what it does is you always have to have a conversation and open dialogue, because you have to always continue learning and understanding. And I think that's what will ultimately happen with this plant, is they'll go back and make it highly illegal for you to grow your own, or even self-medicate yourself. And they're trying to create this big, huge narrative with these opposition groups and trying to claim cannabis is highly addictive and you can destroy your life by, so-called being addicted to cannabis. Now, the thing is anything and everything has an addictive, aspect to it. But cannabis in itself is addictive along the lines if you're addicted to caffeine, right? And like coffee, drinks, nicotine, all that. But you could stop and you're gonna feel terrible, but you don't have, life, your life isn't, on the like hard drugs,
Yeah, I personally, as I was saying before you joined, if I don't have any cannabis, I find myself that I have a bit of a misappetite for a few days. It's hard to eat. I don't sleep so well, but cannabis helps me sleep anyway. Like that's one of the things. It's just it's a good medicine for me that does what I need it to do. But if I don't have it, then I don't turn into massive withdrawal symptoms. I don't have any of those sort of problems. It's natural medicine that works for my body, because my body is meant to receive that type of medicine, and not being able to have this at home, grow this at home, do this for myself is such a disservice. And you match that up against some of the stuff that's out there, like some of the most addictive substances out there, nicotine, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, all readily available. I mean, caffeine and sugar you can buy by the boatload right off the shelf. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's anything, right? So you have to actually keep in mind within how your body reacts, right?
Yeah.
And the homeostasis in its full circle. So if you eat too much McDonald's, right, there's a good chance, or actually over time, you're going to create a heart condition or a heart problem, and you're going to get extremely overweight, and you're going to have issues, right? Because your body's trying to process high fatty foods. But it's anything. Like I said, you can get addicted to essentially biting your nails, because addiction is defined as any sort of habit or something along those lines. But what I'm more concerned about is the sensationalizing it, right? Where you have these people that come on and says, "Oh, I was addicted to cannabis for 3 years," or I've been clean from cannabis for 2 years, 3 years. And it really slaps in the face in people that really beat real addiction. And what I mean by real addiction is addictions that are mind altering, that change the chemical in your brain, in some cases permanently, and those lists is, heroin, fentanyl, you can go down the list. Those drugs are, in many cases, there's really no way out. And we see it. We're in the middle of an epidemic that we haven't seen since the 70s, and I think it's even worse than the one that this country experienced in the 70s. So when you lessen addiction, you have these same people that say, "Oh, well, we'll offer you help and we'll put you in rehab," but if you don't want to go to rehab, we'll force you into rehab. You know, I feel that that's very dangerous rhetoric, because in those same rehabs, in those same meetings, they serve coffee and you get to smoke cigarettes, right? So, you know, it's kind of to me, it's just it's not, it's irresponsible to start talking in that direction. Now, again, people build tolerances and high tolerances, and that's with anything. And then when you stop, right, your body's going to affect this. It's just like if you stop drinking water, you have about 3-4 days before your body starts to shut down and you can have some serious problems. So that's where I think is where, yes, it does have addictive properties. Yes, you could classify it as an addiction, but you can't sensationalize it like it's going to change your whole life. Or if you don't, like, in a sense, if you don't have your fix of your fentanyl, your heroin, your meth, your withdrawal symptoms could kill you, literally kill you, you know. And
or alcohol,
yes, right. So you'll get the shakes, you know, and you know, and I've seen it. I grew up in it. I grew up in a dope house, right? You know, I experienced every type of, you know, was exposed to every type of drug and alcohol, and it destroyed my family tree in many senses, you know, right? So I get I get to see it. So when you see people try to cheapen what true addiction really means, it does get frustrating, and it is in many senses is annoying. So yeah, you want to push back, but also too, I like to ask questions, right? Why do you think this way? You know, all that. And that's why I've urged these podcasters that have these folks on, push back on them a little bit, right? Ask them the questions, you know, because I've noticed when they actually get asked real questions, they kind of, you know, stumble a little bit. And so it's like, you know, you got to always ask questions in order to gain more knowledge, because if you just let somebody just, you know, go on without, you know, being pressed, you know, it sends the wrong message, or the wrong message gets out a lot of times. But that's where I always urge people to have an open dialogue. I got nothing against these people per se, but it's just I do have questions. I do want to you know, meet them halfway with other information to be like, well, you know, not what you're saying isn't fully accurate. And one of the interesting things about all of it is all the research and all these studies they cite are usually internal studies or cherry picked in many senses, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, just kind of circling around on some of the things that I'm seeing in the chat here too. People bringing up things like the movie Super Size Me. I mean, you have people who have horrible fast food addictions, and look at what that does to your body. So it's just more and more of the same bad things, portrayal of the bad myths throughout the media, through these companies, these organizations that want to suppress the truth about this medicine, are really ultimately going to be bringing us down. Hold on a second here. We got somebody who wants to come talk about addiction. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get him here in the chat, because I know he's had some things here. Yeah, just give me a minute, Ray. We're going to pull you in. I can figure out how to do this. Right. This is a new laptop that I'm working on, so I don't have all the things I normally would. Is this going to let me log in? All right. Okay, just a second, Ray. We're going to pull you into Zoom here. Right. There you go, sir. Check your Instagram. I just shot you a link. So yeah, we'll bring somebody in here who's battled real issues and whatnot. We'll talk with them a little bit too, because it's such a serious topic to underplay, and the misinformation, it does nothing good for the community, it does nothing good for helping to push this message of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. And again, if you kind of missed what we were talking about off the top, Brennan and I are starting a new show called Higher Medicine, where you yourself can come on and talk to us about your story, your plights. Maybe you were prescribed cannabis for some sort of addiction or some sort of other substance, or you need it for some sort of medical condition, whatnot. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to talk to you more about it. I right now have a friend of mine. She's going through a personal struggle with cancer, and she's gotten rid of all the pain medications and whatnot. She's just using cannabis to help her. So it's certainly something that we want to bring to the forefront, and with all the misinformation out there and mistruths, be able to bring real stories to the forefront to help people understand what it's like to really be saved by this wonderful wonderful organic substance.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the the more information that you can share, and also too, it's hard to deny when it's shared amongst people that are directly infected by it or that it had impact on it, you know. And I think once those stories begin to get out, people will learn from those stories and take a little bit, and also hopefully find some hope themselves in order to better themselves and help themselves in the long run, because that's really what it's about, is it's sharing the information, sharing the knowledge, and ultimately progressing to find a better way to do stuff, and everybody live their life to their fullest.
100%, 100%. So I'm not sure if we get Ray here on and come chat with us. Is there any activist stuff, any things that you're aware of in the community that you might want to share with people?
For activists, yeah,
Yeah.
well, stuff that's coming on. So the past number of weeks, we've been working on and talking to groups around the country that what I noticed, and what I've noticed from the community itself is you have all these groups that are localized and have and push for cannabis rights or whatever's going on locally in particular. So you have this organization coming together, but it's so fractured. It's all these little tiny pieces. And so we've started to shift and turn that conversation to folks that have influence, that have a widespread, to start pulling these groups together and becoming a whole piece. We're getting ready to sign on to a group out in New York, which is the Legacy Growers Association. Dr. Dankenstein's behind that. They've asked us to sit on the board. They've made a lot of headway. The guy's a really good guy, really about the grower. He's got a really great story. We opened up dialogue, had a conversation back and forth, and he asked us to be a part of it, and he said, yeah, 100%. But really, our main goal is to start bringing people together and moving as one unit and bringing this community together, because when you really factor in the community as a whole, we're talking of 5, 6, 7 million people in just this country alone. That's not counting the rest of the world. That's a powerful tool down the long run, because thus, a lot of those folks are going to see a lot of hypocrisy, but we're all brought together for this plant in order to protect this plant. So we can agree. Doesn't matter what our background is. Doesn't matter where we come from. Doesn't matter what our political party preference is. None of that stuff. None of that applies to this plant. And that's why I feel that there's a true sense and a true movement that could be a plant-based movement in this country, not just here, but also Canada and around the world. So I'm pretty excited to be a part of that and having those conversations. And I've had a conversation with about 15 to 20 of these folks around the country, and there's a handful of stuff that everybody agrees on, but when you get down into the nitty-gritty stuff, yeah, you don't really agree. But the cool part is a lot of people in this particular community, they know how to agree to disagree, right? And move on and work on the things that we can agree on. I'm pretty excited for the future, the way that that's going, as long as that momentum and that energy can stay up.
Right on, right on. Looks like Ray's going to join us here in just a minute. He's just getting logged in now, so love
Oh,
to
that's all
talk to
good.
him more.
But
That'd be
yeah, that's
perfect.
but those type of conversations I like having. Also too, I have a sensational appetite for knowledge, so I'm constantly reading, constantly looking stuff up. That's why a lot of times I want to make sure if I say something on a live or if I say something on a post or something like that, I can readily back it up. I can point you in the direction of where I found that information, and and that's been key to a lot of people, because I've had people press me in the comment section, and it's like, well, here's a legitimate source. You can find this information because that's where I got it. That's where I learned from it, you
Yeah.
know. And like one person, one of the things that a lot of people found really fascinating is the fact that here in this country, like the FDA, 75% of its funding comes from the very companies it's supposed to regulate, right? That's why we have, a lot of the issues that we have. But when it's kind of like, when you have the companies and the industries, funding you that you're supposed to oversee, there's a lot of potential for a lot of corruption within that system. It's just a faulty, bunk system. And that system started to form in the early 90s, and looks, in my opinion, it was done by design, and really at some point as a country, or basically both Canada and the United States, we have to wake up and realize that we're getting screwed in a lot of places. And this is a fight that a lot of people are willing to take on and really push. And I think by this fight alone is going to, in the wake of this fight, is going to improve a lot of the way things are done, in North America in particular, because when you think about cannabis and you think about the community, I think the U.S. Canadian border is just simply a line along the 49th parallel, right? Because I think in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of commonality between those two countries, which kind of makes it one when it comes to the cannabis community.
Right, right. Okay, looks like he's just getting in here now. Give him just a minute to join up, and then we can talk to him about his story. I see in the chat here we got a couple of guys. We got Brad Starr, we got Sean Brooks, and they've got personal tales. Brad here, he says, I am diagnosed addiction high from heroin. Have been growing for 3 years and haven't touched a needle since. It's medicine, makes them functional. Brad, reach out, man, if you want to come and talk to us more about your story. Sean says he lost 27 years to addiction from loss of sibling. It's cannabis that got me back on track, and now he's living and enjoying life with a smile. Like, these are real people, real stories, man. Like, this is amazing stuff. There he is. Ray, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you, my friend?
Good, good. Been a minute. Glad to see you, man.
Yeah, just been, playing video games. A lot of video games.
Good way to spend some time, for
I
sure.
got sucked into Final Fantasy 11 during my winter layoff. So I've been doing
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So Brad, pardon me, Ray, you say you've got you wanna come and talk a little bit about your own personal story with addiction, man. The floor is yours.
I was trapped in doing heroin on a daily basis. And like COVID was really the height of it. When we got all that free money, I mean, $600 a week on top of my job that I was working full time. And I mean, literally, like I was really just like every day, hundreds of dollars every day. And
Wow.
I just couldn't take it anymore. And next thing you know, and that way, and then when I started growing, and you know me, Matt, I was on one of your first videos.
Yeah,
when you
a
did
while back.
the grower showcase. And but cannabis has done miracles for getting me off of doing dope and cocaine. Losing my brother, and addiction's horrible.
Sorry to hear about your brother. I do have a question that a lot of people might not know. Is with heroin addiction, I'm familiar with a lot of friends and family that suffered from heroin addiction, and I know a lot of people understand the withdrawals and with heroin, that's sheer pain, right? I mean,
it literally changes your brain chemistry. So they've done a whole video on it called the medical aspects of addiction, where literally your brain gets rewired to put addiction above food. So like the way I think is like addiction first, food second. And so you've got to change that. And you've got to, like I had a detox and it was the worst thing. I was sick for days and days, like literally a week straight. And then it was, but that's when I started using cannabis to help me sleep because I was not sleeping for days.
And I'd like to point also out is when you decided to go that route, when you decided to kick heroin, you get a couple of options from from Western medicine, which is methadone and Suboxone, right?
Yeah.
And essentially when you look at that, that's in itself is a business too, because Purdue Pharmaceuticals, which is the one that actually put out all the Oxycontins that eventually led to the heroin disaster, they tried to buy Suboxone, right? So it's essentially it's like grifting. But with those two things, when those were probably you probably looked at those options as as options to get clean, right?
Yeah, I've done actually both of them. I've done both of them, and I've never had no real long-term success.
Yeah,
and so it was cannabis, and because for me it was the sleeping. As long as I could start sleeping, I was okay, and then I could start to put my life together. Because sleeping was the most important thing. Because once you haven't slept for 3 or 4 days, and you're like, man, I just want to sleep. And then next thing you know, you're like, well, I'll just get a little bit of dope. And then once you get a little bit of dope, it starts to cycle all over again. And all you really wanted for was sleep. After 4 days of not sleeping, you just wanted a little bit of dope to not, so you could get some sleep. And next thing you know, you're ripping and running again. And so once I started doing cannabis and I started taking edibles at night, and I out for the whole night, that's when I stuck with that kind of a medication. And I take 40 milligrams. I know, because I buy 200 milligram packs of edibles, and I take 40 milligrams a night. And I sleep soundly every night now.
Because your body is actually going through a healing process as you sleep, right? So your body's beginning to reset. There's a lot of stuff. So if you're not able to sleep, that's why the degradation when heroin addicts, meth addicts, and all that. The reason why they degrade so fast is not just with the chemical, but it's the lack of sleep that they'll get, because they'll be up for days in many cases. But that's one thing I've noticed is, like, here in Washington, we have methadone clinics, and it's like a rotation. It's you're exchanging one thing for another, but they'll put you on a dose and they'll keep you there. So now I had experiences with a family member where they went to get clean. They had a pill addiction and went to get clean. I had to go through the methadone program, and they kept asking, hey, can I get my dose lowered, right? So I can start working my way out, because you got to wean off. And they're like, no, you need to stay at this dose for, months at a time.
Yeah.
And finally just came to the point where they just left the program, because they were like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm I got to go to this place at 6 a.m. every day and not getting any relief. And that's what I'm thinking is like, if people can find other options and other alternatives to fix, kind of similar to what you did. And I think that you have a couple other things that you haven't touched on, is the fact that you're a new grower, right? So you have the responsibility of keeping your plants, alive and healthy, but also on a learning curve of learning the ins and outs of growing. So I think it's becoming a full circle thing for you, in order for you to maintain a better life, because we all know what addiction and how disastrous addiction is. And you literally, people that are addicted shut everybody out, besides
for sure,
other addicts, and it's nothing. And I think what the problem is it's stigmatized, where people we're quick to blame people. And in reality, I think it's those type of addictions is a mental health issue to the fullest, and needs to be treated like sense, because we've spent the past 50 years trying to lock our way out of it by locking people up and protecting people from themselves, and not really taking a comprehensive look and being like, hey, these people just need assistance, they need relief, they need something. And I think in many cases you get bamboozled, because they'll be like, oh, well, let's give you this Suboxone, or let's give you this methadone, let's get you antidepressants because you're going to be depressed because you're not going to have this dope, and you're just basically exchanging one major issue for another. And it does get frustrating to see on such a regular basis.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and seeing what I got just diagnosed with lately is that I got a digital ulcer on my left middle finger, and I ended up being diagnosed with scleroderma, which is a hardening of the skin. And so now I've got other issues. And I remember even talking to my rheumatologist a couple of years ago, and he was like, well, what have you done differently? And I was like, well, I've been, doing a lot of cannabis stuff. And it was the CBD, because it's an anti-inflammatory,
Mhm.
the CBD. So next thing you know, rheumatoid arthritis and any autoimmune disorder it floods you with inflammation. So like right now, it's my skin's tightening. My body's producing too much collagen. And so now I'm starting to get into topicals to try and ease some of the inflammation out of my system.
The topicals are a wonderful thing too. I have shoulder issues and stuff. I was in a car accident a few years ago, and for me, it's just THC CBD 1-to-1 applied topically a couple times, over a few hours. Just amazing things, man. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
Yep. And so I'm starting to get with those. Just like in what I don't want to be on, because I'll be 50 this year, and I'm already on, because it is an autoimmune disorder. I am taking the medications for the scleroderma, which is more blood thinners than anything. It's just so we can get the blood flowing, because the three illnesses are all tied together. I've got rheumatoid arthritis, Raynaud's disease, which sucks if you live in a cold climate, because I have an abnormal reaction to cold. Like as soon as I go outside, my fingers turn white. No blood gets to them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was from years of addiction, but it's actually an autoimmune disorder where my veins, it's an abnormal reaction, and all my veins constrict. And so I don't get no blood flow. And so I've got to take these medications just to improve blood flow, or I'll get these sores now. And so I'm like, I don't want to be on a whole bunch of medications. The next thing you know, especially this digital ulcer, it happened back in October, and it was so painful. And just imagine if you had 2 or 3 of these, and then next thing you know, they're like, well, you're going to need some sort of Vicodin or something like that. And that's what really scares me, is when the doctor starts to offer me, well, you're in so much pain, you're going to need some sort of pain medication. And that's scary. Any heroin addict will tell you that that's the worst, like to get prescribed any type of pain medication is just, it's a death.
Yeah, because it's so close to the gateway, right? The true gateway back to that. Like I had a real close friend of mine that was in a motorcycle accident, and he went through basically was told he was never going to walk again. But this is the same guy that kicked the heroin addiction cold turkey. He locked himself in a room for 4 days essentially, and went through hell. And when he came out, I saw him, shortly after he came out, and he looked like shit. I mean, looked like he just went through the depths of hell. And we're sitting in the 7-Eleven parking lot, and he's scarfing down a nasty ass looking chili cheese hot dog. And he's like, I don't even like chili cheese hot dogs, but he's like, I'm hungry, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he was obviously he had to be on pain medication, he had to be on all that, but the whole time that's what he kept saying. He's like, man, I'm scared, right? I'm terrified that this is going to lead me back, to that life, and that's a real scare for a lot of people that have went through that. But one thing that was really interesting is he winged himself down, and he got off of everything, and then he was only left with antidepressants, right? And to him, he's like, these aren't addictive. I don't even need these. So he stopped taking them. And he said after about 3 days, 4 days, he said he started hearing his own voice in his head telling him to do crazy shit, right? And he said it was, he's like, the way he put it was, well, it's your voice, right? You're going to start believing it, right? Because it's you telling you, right? And he had a serious episode. And so when he actually finally talked to the doctor about it, the doctor was like, well, you can't just stop taking those. That's what'll happen, So he had to go through the whole process and wing himself off and slowly wing himself off. But the same thing, he does a regimen of different salves for the joints where he does have pain. And also, yes, he does walk. He does have every once in a while assistance to a cane, but he did, overcome that, wheelchair for the rest of his life. That's just because the mindset he put himself in, and there's a lot that has to do with that mindset. But yeah, it's really interesting on that is very important that people, anything you want to overcome, you have to get into that mindset. So as an example, you decided to to push to be clean and get off and get off of that dope. So what pushed you? What made you decide to lean towards cannabis as a major potential solution to what you were looking for?
Well, it was about the sleep. As I was saying, it was more about the sleep. As long as I could get some sleep, and the only way I was able to find any type of relaxation, because my body was just so tense from detoxing that I had to try. And next thing you know, I was like, well, weed always made me go to bed. Ever since I was a kid, if I smoke a joint, and that's the reason I never really liked smoking pots, because I was like, it just makes me go to sleep. And that's before I knew about indicas and sativas and stuff like that, or terps, and learning about a nice citrus, anything citrus. Well, I will not get so sleepy, but give me something that's like a lavender kush, and next thing you know, like I'm out for 8 hours. And
so it was something you learned from before. It was knowledge that you, in personal experience, knowledge that you learned before to push you in that direction. And that's what I was kind of getting at. That's why I say knowledge is power. Knowledge is extremely important, and learning from life experiences. And so, from my understanding, what you're saying is it was a life experience. So every time you smoke, you got tired. You're like, hey, this is a solution. And the alternative to that is like Ambien or one of those sleeping meds, and that's just
another crazy
stuff.
I've heard about people taking too much Ambien and they go into Ambien psychosis, and next thing you know, they're sleepwalking and going all crazy. So no, that's not for me. I've never found any type of like magic pill that'll make me just everything I wanted, but cannabis is a pretty close second. Because I even like what Matt was saying is if I like if I'm out for a week or whatever, I'm not panicking. There's no panic to it. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm out.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah,
but that's all it does. It just yeah. And like bringing this back around to kind of what we were talking about at the beginning here, with a lot of this science still being restricted down in the States, is there's so many cannabinoids, terpenes, and the way that they work together, and the way they interplay with your personal chemistry, the way your own brain has different receptors for different things. I mean, it may just be that somebody who's suffering from a certain type of mental illness just doesn't have enough CBG in their system. We don't know that though, because there's no science being done, or at least
no, not here.
Science,
in Israel
in Israel,
there's a lot of that in Israel, and ultimately,
we all went to Israel with that one. And the other ones, they found the whole endocannabinoid system, and they're doing wonderful research over there. And I wish that they would finally get us off this federal ban so they could really research it here.
Yeah, that might be the slow walk might be by design. But to your point, Matt, I think by moving into this podcasting and allowing people to tell their story, and I would want to push in as a community to create like a space where people can come and talk about whatever, right? Because a lot of times it's really hard for people to get their story up because they feel like they're going to be judged, or there's a lot of things behind that, or they don't want anybody to know. It's just it's been demonized, and to not talk about it, like push it under the rug. And in reality, you want to get people to tell their real stories, because that is impactful across the board, because people are looking for solutions and looking for looking for things in life, and by learning from other people, like your friend here, he was looking for a solution, and he had potential solutions, but he was looking for the right one, and it looks like he's found one. But he also keeps building off of that and expanding and improving, what's making him feel better, and obviously leaps and bounds from where you were before. But it was the steps that you took in order to get there. And I think that what I've seen in the comments is that some people like, I love to tell my story, but I'm kind of shy to do that, and I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story, because that's it's a big, huge step, and it's that particular step is one of the hardest steps for a lot of people,
Yeah, For
And
sure.
to springboard off that, if you want to tell your story, but this whole YouTube thing is too much for you, I've just thrown a link in the chat there to my Discord. If that link disappears and you're watching this video at a later date, photosyntech1@gmail.com or medicinehire@gmail.com. Reach out to us. We'll get you in there. Come talk to us there. It's a safe space. Nothing but growers in there who want to help people.
Oh, and Matt, I got a runts going downstairs right now.
Nice.
It's a
Nice.
But
beautiful
also
little
too,
plant.
we'll start we'll start to be able to kind of get over time people talking about different strains and different profiles and all that that would help them. And over time, that data starts to come together, and you get kind of a better picture on what
Yep.
does what to particular people. Now, this ain't a this is a broad stroke. This isn't a
For sure.
yeah, that's what you have. A lot of people have to understand is you still have to take the initiative to continue finding the answers to what you're
Yep.
doing. We're just trying to give starting points and hey, look, this worked for this particular person. It may not work for you, but if
Yeah.
you dig a little deeper, you might find something that does eventually help. And that's like one thing I learned recently was the importance and how important CMOS was. Right? I've been oblivious to it. And I got in a conversation with a couple of people. They brought that up, so I started, researching it, started looking into it, and it's amazing on how much of your nutrient content that you can get out of CMOS. I didn't know that up until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it was I took their information, didn't necessarily take their word for it. I just went and kind of researched it myself so I could get a little bit more in depth on that. And that's why I encourage everybody is sometimes you have to do your own research and look your own things up, and also sometimes too when your doctor, you have to kind of you got to ask the right questions and continue asking questions, but also do some research on exactly what's going into your body as well too, and that way you're making the best decision for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Hey, well,
on.
listen, Matt, and in-house, I got to get going. I got some stuff I got to take care of. So it was nice, and thanks for inviting me on. And do it again sometime, Matt.
Absolutely, man. You stay in touch, right?
All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Take care,
Much
guys.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Like I said, with the messages and the emails that I've gotten from folks and all that, I'm really excited to kind of hearing their stories and what they went through and what helped them out. But one thing that always rings true in those stories, folks, and I keep hearing just about every single one is when they were faced with something really tough, they stressed on how important it was to get into the right mindset to go take this journey that they were going to, when they chose to actually fight and push, they had to mentally put themselves in the right state of mind and be positive. Because I think that there's a big, huge effect on a lot of people. If you think of a lot of things as negative or continue to be negative, you're not going to get the amount of progress that you really would get is if you're positive about the situation, And so there's always, I guess, and then look for the silver lining of things and in the brighter side of stuff and see, keep pushing towards those lights,
Absolutely. And I think, just kind of final thoughts and wrapping this up. And thanks again for stopping by the show today, Brennan. Cannabis is only as addictive as you want it to be or as you let it be. It's not a substance that's going to take over and destroy you unless it's something that you do to yourself. It's not a bad thing. It's medicine, especially when used properly.
Well, it's also too, I've had a lot of failures, in my adult life, and you gotta accept those and take those. Where I think some of the people will look for, like the blame game,
Yeah.
and I've seen people in their testimonials about when they were addicted to cannabis, and like one of those guys, part of one of those advocate groups that oppose cannabis, said that he had to uproot his whole family and himself and get out of town because of his cannabis addiction. And it just got me thinking, like, no, that doesn't make sense. I mean, unless you ran off on the plug, right? And then the person wanted their money would be the only reason why you'd have to actually just move completely and relocate, right? Not, yeah, it just, some of those things is disastrous in many cases. But I think that the narrative is changing in the right places in the community. And I think this community, no joke, shows up and shows out. And I think that this plant is going to bring a lot of people together and network with a lot of people that otherwise would have never even known each other or networked, I mean, as an example, this plant is how we got to know each other, and get familiar with each other. But what actually built our bridge and built our bond is from the projects that we kicked off with the One World, One Plant and the Blazing Janes. That got me, us into normal, consistent conversation, so that's a networking aspect. And this plant has been responsible for a lot more good than it ever could be attributed to the harm that people say it causes.
Very well put. Well, I think we'll call it on that then. And guys, keep an eye out. Higher Medicine coming to this YouTube channel very soon. And if you would like to be on the show, just reach out to us at medicinehire@gmail.com.
Welcome back. Also, too, welcome back. You're just kicking off the podcast, right? You took
you bet. Yeah, so we did some sort of the beginning of the year just with Neil on there, but this is sort of officially getting back into things. I'm going to be putting the vlog posts up. I got some new sponsors that I'm working with. Exciting times.
Well, I got to say, I really appreciate you not letting YouTube and the social media wins, because that's one thing that was really hanging over you. It was like, man, I can't even get anything done. They keep taking me down, all that. But it just goes to show that you're ready to fight, because you're like, you know what? I'm not going to be silent. So I'm going to keep going. If they take my account down, I'm just going to start another one. People will be able to find you. Yeah. So yeah, also too, I wanted to tell you welcome back, and I'm glad that you're kicking the podcast back off and you didn't shelve it, because there was a minute there where you were possibly contemplating it, because just due to the terms of service is ridiculous when it comes to social medias.
It's community, man. It's such a freaking awesome community that they support and lift people up. We elevate. That's what we do.
And also, be remiss if I didn't mention the chat. The chat on every time we go live, or I go live, or we go onto these things, you guys, the stuff that you put in those chats in the back and forth. Also, too, keeping it civil is awesome, but really, it goes to show the power of it, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of good stuff that's just found in the chat section on these videos. So big shout out to all you folks that keep showing up and participating in this, and not just the support of Photosynthetic, but also in-house. And I can speak on in-house. One of the main things is we really appreciate it, because we're here because you're here. So as long as you guys keep showing up, we'll keep showing up, and we'll keep doing and progressing forward. Because I got really good folks that I network with, that surround myself with, like Photosynthetic. So the future's bright. Let's keep building off of it.
Awesome. Well, much love, Brennan. Certainly appreciate the support that you guys give too, and support of everybody here in the community. So let's just keep on supporting each other and doing wonderful things with this wonderful non-addictive plant. I think that's about it for the day. So we will sign off. And Brendan, thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.
See ya.